So a while back I changed the channel name, and I decided not to go with just the boat name because, well, what if I got a new boat? That day is here. Yeah, that's not the boat I bought. This is the boat I bought. But I guess I should go back a little and explain how I got here. Some of you may remember about 4 years ago, I bought a boat in Seattle and sailed it up to Sitka. And that's kind of where the story ended. If you're new here, there'll be a link below in the description, and that'll be to the playlist of that trip. So I really don't know where to start. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. After I got to Sitka, I met a girl, and she made me want to drop anchor there. Unfortunately, things didn't work out. So, of course, I focused on going back to sailing the world. The problem was, my transmission broke, I crashed my boat, I kind of gave up on better days. So there the boat sat, just tied to a dock. And the years just kind of drug by, and it just sat. I toyed around with the idea of trying to restart the YouTube channel, trying to pursue the goal of sailing. Unfortunately, I just continued to convince myself not to. Then the opportunity came for me to move offices within my job, and I thought this would be a good idea because it was a new office in a new city, and I had a little bit more anonymity. So some of the things and the excuses that I had for not continuing with the sailing channel, in my mind, would hopefully just go away. So I packed my boat, prepared for the journey. It was over the Christmas holidays, and I even convinced a friend to come down and join me for the adventure. I was going to video the entire thing. The problem is, as you can see behind me, it's been really, really foggy. I mean, to the point where sometimes you can't even see 100 yards in front of you, so there is that. Yeah, and that's about all I got. Day one going around the airport, we hit 12 to 14 foot seas. And while my friend, they found out they get seasick. So, I ended up having to single hand most of the way, and unfortunately with the rough seas, I wasn't able to take any video that day. I did make it to Appleton Cove, and it's a nice protected anchorage, but of course by the time we got there, pitch black dark, so really no video then either. So day two started, and it was smooth as glass. But the fog had rolled in, and well, you saw what we saw. Absolutely nothing that day. We anchored out in Cube Cove that night just as the fog started to break and the sun went down. So really there wasn't any video of day two either. We spent the evening preparing for Christmas dinner. The next day was Christmas and we were expecting a storm. So we were going to stay anchored in the cove and hopefully be protected from the storm. Unfortunately, the storm shifted a little bit and pounded the out of us the next morning. We decided to pull up anchor and power through it up Chatham Strait to Funtner Bay, which is about 3.5 to 4 hours away. The entire time we were going through 8 to 10 foot seas, and it wasn't relenting. Gusts up to 50 to 60 knots. One of them even ripped the dinghy right off the deck of the boat. We had to turn around and go back. That was not fun. But my friend, seasick the whole time. So again, I was single-handed, and unfortunately, there was no video that day. We made it to Funtner Bay, and we did have a nice Christmas dinner there. So there is that. Day 4 wasn't too bad. We left out of Funtner Bay, went around Admiralty, the top of Admiralty Island, and ended up making it to Juneau that evening, just in time to watch the sunset. After getting to Juneau, my aspirations for getting this channel up and running again, well, they kind of fell to the wayside again. There was damage to the boat. I found more things that needed to be done, and really, at this point, I just thought this whole me sailing the world, well, the idea was moot. The biggest issue was I needed a new boat, and I really didn't have a way of getting one. But after months and months and months went by, a miracle happened. The house that I had for sale, that I had been renting out previous to the pandemic, it finally sold. It had been on the market for over a year, but it finally sold. I decided I'm going to take that money, I'm going to reinvest it in my world cruising boat. So I started looking. With the pandemic, not knowing the time frames, as far as when I'll be launching, not knowing if and when I'll be able to get the boat up to Alaska, or really how I'm going to be able to get the boat up to Alaska to work on it, I decided to look for a boat on the West Coast. So I started looking, and I narrowed it down to most of the boats being in California. So I booked a trip and flew on down. I looked at a lot of boats in that trip, and even made a side trip up to Los Angeles and San Francisco. In the end, I saw enough boats, and I decided to put an offer in on the one that I saw that met my needs the most. Now, this wasn't like when I found Queen of Hearts. Queen of Hearts, I liked her immediately. This boat, I was a little iffy on. But the more research that I did, and the more time that I spent on her, the happier I was with my choice. So my offer was tentatively accepted, pending, of course, survey and sea trials. So, you know what that means. Another trip down to San Diego. A little negotiation later, and once again, that was a new boat owner.